Robert Plank Show, episode 67. Proof of concept. Use the minimum viable product, prototyping, and version 1.0 to leapfrog your competitors and get everything done. Welcome back to the Robert Plank Show. I'm your host, Robert Plank. We're going to talk today about making money from home, creating your money websites, and passive income, and so much more. The only way you're going to make any kind of consistent progress is to break it up into milestones. There are these geeky terms that apply to software, that apply to computer programming, that we are instead going to use on your online business and on your personal inner game, your inner motivation. Because the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, but the optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. That's what Winston Churchill said about overcoming your obstacles and rising to the challenge and having that entrepreneur mindset. When people say mean things about you, it's a reflection on themselves. And boy, are you going to have some naysayers, some people who are themselves insecure and would like nothing better than for you to be more insecure than them so that you will fail in your online business. There are people rooting for you to fail. That's just a fact of life. Now, John C. Maxwell says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So along those lines, the Internet Marketer of the Week is Mr. Marlon Sanders from writerssecret.com and from thetrafficdashboard.com. Now this guy, I don't even know where to start with this guy, but he's a real character and he really makes me laugh sometimes when I see the silly videos he makes, and I really respect him a lot. And the number one reason for that is because he puts out a lot of products the same way that I do. And I think that the tendency in internet marketing is to go in one of two extremes and either pump out a crappy $7 product, another crappy $7 product, and the other extreme is to spend your whole entire lifetime, the last 10 years of your life, polishing stuff and making it right and making your whopper of a $10,000 course that by the time you finish it, no one's even going to buy it. So the place you should be is somewhere in the middle, and to be prolific with your product creation, but also make it something that'll help people and something that actually delivers some good results. So the cool thing about Mr. Marlon Sanders is he plays the middle. He can consistently put out all these really cool products, these really cool offers, membership sites, packages, all that good stuff, but it's loaded with all kinds of cool bonuses that not only make it a great product, but also make the sales letter really dang easy to write. What a concept. The number one most powerful thing I ever heard from this guy, I'm not even sure if he realizes this is his coolest thing he's ever said, is to absorb the changes. What does that mean? It means that, well, there are other people who have more than you, a bigger list, bigger following, they can't help but be positioned in some way in the marketplace, and we all build off each other. No one person invented the opt-in pages you see today. No one person invented autoresponders, paid traffic. Everyone just built what already existed on top of other things, just as how it is. So absorb the changes means that if you thought of a really cool idea and then someone else goes and so-called steals your idea, then you don't have to get mad. You just absorb the things they added onto your idea and then, in fact, add on even more. So it becomes more of a horse race and not, well, someone took my idea forever. Well, you know what? If someone steals your idea, doesn't that sound like you no longer have the idea? They didn't perform amnesia on you. They copied your idea. And you no longer have to get angry because that thing that you thought of already existed before you had a chance to make it. We've all been there. Or maybe you created something and no one noticed it years ago, but then 2 years later passed and now the cycle, the trend has come back around, and now some huge genius suddenly thought of the thing that you yourself thought of years ago. I was the second person to ever create a plugin, and I wrote it myself, that used WordPress as a sales letter. I'm the first person, as far as I know of, to create a dime sale script, even though we didn't call it that, where every time somebody bought a product from you, the price increased by 5 cents or by 10 cents, meaning that the more sales you had of your product, the more valuable it became and the higher the price was. As far as I know, I'm the second or maybe third person to create a plugin that takes ClickBank products, high converting products that are sometimes recurring, and you can put them on a website and they act like Google Ads. Now, I no longer I think I sold off a couple of those businesses years ago because I moved on to the next thing, the thing that was then making me money. I mean, you can't believe that you're only going to come out with one book in your life, one product in your life, or one video, and that's what you're going to live off. Everything changes, and sometimes things change and you just have to present them in a different way. But Mr. Marlon Sanders says to absorb the changes. Now, people give cliched advice like, well, just pick one single person and serve them, or imagine a customer avatar and then, serve a 50-year-old guy named Bob who's divorced. Or they say to model the steps successful people have, and that's all great, but what is way more valuable for me is to absorb the changes. Microsoft came out with a touchscreen tablet almost a decade before Apple did, but it flopped because the timing wasn't quite right. Companies like Trio or the Palm Pilot guys or Handspring came out with basically crude smartphones in the late 90s, but they flopped. And then a decade later, Apple comes along or BlackBerry comes along and somehow invents this thing that they had just thought of. Well, no, they found something old and added a new spin on it. The best ideas are combinations of 2 to 3 things. The iPhone is not just a phone, but it's also a web browser and a mini computer where you can run apps. Facebook is not just a place where you can post your own diary, but it's a way where you can communicate with your friends and share or forward cool things that you like. It's replaced the email forward chain when now everyone's on Facebook. So Internet Marketer of the Week, Marlon Sanders. Now, most people have too many ideas and they're too scatterbrained or pulled in different directions, or they read 100 books a week and they're spread out way too thin, a mile wide and an inch deep. Most people can't tell the forest from the trees. If a new kind of pop-up comes out or a new way of list building comes out all over the place on Facebook groups and the emails I get and things like that, I see things that have been repeated over and over and over that just seem to have a new spin on it, but people don't realize that this is just an update of something that already existed. Now, how do you separate all that? How do you avoid getting confused? And how do you even know what to do next in your online business? We're going to talk today about this really helpful tool for me called the proof of concepts, which basically means that if I'm going to make, well, in my case, if I'm going to make a plugin or a piece of software that does something, for example, we just came out with a service called Website Remote, where you can manage all your WordPress sites in one place, update all your plugins, see the versions of WordPress you're running, cool stuff like that. The first, or one of the early steps in that was just to create the proof of concept. Don't make it fancy, just prove that it can work, and then we can connect the pieces later. So many times, as this relates to internet marketing, I see people get caught up on tasks that are fun to do and quick to finish, but don't actually make them money and don't even come close to moving them in the direction of making money. It's fun to think of new ideas for products. It's fun to register domain names and get graphics made and install a new test site. And those are all things that at some point you should do, but is that one of the first things you should do? I'm not convinced. I'm not so sure. Let's get to that today. But first, 5 successful fundamentals to model from other marketers. If you're having trouble separating the forest from the trees, if you don't know what there is to do next in your business, if you feel like you've tried everything and nothing works, usually you tell me you've tried everything and nothing works. You tell me you've bought all these courses. I ask you, where's your site? Where's your opt-in page? You have no answer for me. So the 5 things that you should have, and if you don't have these 5 things, you need to make the first one, make the next one, make the next one. And if you do have these 5 things, I guarantee that one or two or all of them are neglected. You need to go back and update them and beef them up. Number one, a high ticket course. That way you have a big profit margin. It's so much fun. If you've never gotten an email saying you just made $1,000 just now in the last minute for doing nothing, it's a pretty cool feeling, and you should be selling something that's high value and high ticket, that has 4 or 8 modules, that has a video in each module and a checklist and maybe a piece of software. But if you're in a niche that has a lot of hungry buyers that are willing to pay all kinds of money, and I'm talking about real estate and not clipping coupons, a niche where lots of people have money, like to spend money, and where $1,000 is not a lot of money, that's a great place to be. So number one, high ticket course. Number two, low ticket solution or software to build a list. And this is almost built into number one, because if you make a really helpful high ticket course, you can probably find one little piece to pull out of it and then sell just that little piece for $7, $97, or even give it away. Years and years and years ago, we put out a course called Newbie Crusher that we later on updated to Income Machine, and one of those modules is where we sold a membership plugin. I wrote this membership plugin since I'm one of those nerdy programmers, and it's called Member Genius. We now sell Member Genius, but for a couple of years, we gave away that plugin for free. Now, how cool is that? A thing like a membership plugin, which allows you to protect content and take payments, everyone charges for that. And usually the price tag is $100, $200, $300, and we gave that thing away for free. And we would have between 10 and 100 opt-ins, email signups every single day just from that being out there. So that was pretty cool. That was a great way to get a huge list of consistently growing subscribers, because if you don't build your dang list, you're going to lose 1% of that list per day every day. Okay? And I mean, there is compound interest on that sucker, right? So if you have a list of 10,000 subscribers, well then every day you're going to lose 100 of those. Until, then you get down to 9,000. Every day you're going to lose 90, and on and on. And if you don't contact your people for a month or longer, you're going to lose them even faster. So you got to keep building the list. So give away or sell something low ticket that everyone else is charging a lot of money for, just so you can get your little slight edge on the market. Then number three is all the warm-up stuff. I'm talking about free content to get people warmed up to you. Free blog posts, YouTube videos, autoresponder sequence with a blend of pitch and content. A short 25-page Kindle book couldn't hurt. And that is why, knock on wood, fingers crossed, all that stuff, I have been putting out a podcast episode of this show consistently for the past 6 months. It's my 6-month anniversary just about of being consistent with the Robert Plank Show. I keep on putting it out because I put out a podcast, I go and look at the numbers, and I say, cool, thousands of people listen to it, I'm going to keep making more of these. Now, number four, a platinum coaching program, which is easy money. Now, a platinum program, as far as I see it, is a recurring, forever, monthly bill that someone pays. And in exchange for that monthly bill, they get access to all of your products, and you meet with them on a webinar where you can see their screen for 1 hour per week on the same day of the week at the same time of day on that week. That way you don't have to spend all this time scheduling. That's what a platinum coaching program is for me. And I would say the majority of the training that we perform on this thing called a platinum coaching program is walking someone through the exact steps in one of our courses. Not to say that our courses aren't helpful and don't get people where they want to go, but the majority of our platinum program is doing the course in front of them. So don't think you have to be super smart at every single subject. We, for example, sell a course called Membership Cube, and in our platinum program, a lot of the times, we will be teaching and showing membership sites. And I'll say, here's me setting up your sites. your actual site that you'll set up later to make money. Here's me putting a button on it. Here's me writing the copy, and then it's like a therapist where once our hour's up, the time's up, and then we meet next week. Now, number 5, be a thought leader, speaker, innovator, and teacher, even if it doesn't come naturally. I'm probably one of the shyest people you'll ever meet, but because I actually found something that gets me pumped up and excited, which is programming, membership sites, WordPress webinars, and internet marketing, that more than counteracts whatever natural shyness used to be in me as a teenager or as a little kid. And and this is probably bad, but one of my strongest motivating forces is jealousy before the fact. I don't know if that's even a term, but if I Google search my name, there are a couple other Robert Planks out there. There's a couple German guys with my name. So the reason why I put out podcast, blog posts, articles is because I want those Google searches to only have my name in them. I have lots of ideas for courses and software and plugins, and I put the things that my ideas out there because I know that if I don't put it out there, someone else will. If there's a real need in the marketplace for a membership plugin that drips content, or for a quiz kind of plugin or a forum kind of plugin, then someone else is going to beat me to it if I don't put out the plugin that I wanted to create. 5 successful fundamentals: high ticket course, low ticket solution, warm up content, platinum coaching program, and be a thought leader. It's important that you knock these out one at a time in series, which means knock out number 1. Great. Now the high ticket course is done. If you stop now, you'd still have a high ticket course that's selling. Then pull out a piece of that. Now you have the low ticket solution. Great. Now you realize that in creating the high ticket and low ticket products, there are things you want to talk about that don't quite fit anywhere else. And that's where your warm-up content comes in. Like when I post something to a blog or put it on a podcast, they're just things that I can't really figure out how they fit into our paid courses, but I still want to talk about those things. And on and on. So we want to do those things one at a time in series and not all at once in parallel. You don't want to look at those 5 components I talked about and register 5 domain names and then set up 5 WordPress blogs and set up 5 WordPress themes, because now you're only 3% done with all 5 projects. Now you're only 4% done with all 5 projects. Eventually, you're 20% done with 5 different things. But guess what? You could have now been 100% done with the first thing and making money from that if only you had done this in series, not in parallel. Things that are angering me this week. There are 3 quick things you can fix in your online business. The first one is no real mailing address on your websites. Well, what the heck are you afraid of? It adds legitimacy. Even if you only have a post office box, have some kind of a mailing address on your website. I might want to talk to you. A news outlet might want to talk about you. And there have been many times when I was really, really early on getting started, I had a mentor who was a Scottish guy who was mentioned in newspapers every now and then because people were looking for authorities on different sites. So this guy would create Google ad sites, and he would make, for example, a Christmas themed site, a Halloween kind of site, fill it with content. And this was in kind of sort of the early days of the internet where people didn't always have a mailing address, but he did. So he got a lot more media exposure than many of his competitors because they would all hide behind a website and he didn't. Simple thing to fix, add a mailing address on your website. Number 2 of the things angering me is when people link directly to an order form in an email. Isn't that kind of lazy? Maybe you've seen this. You get an email in your inbox and someone says, I've got a webinar course, how to do webinars, how to run them, all that good stuff. There's all these good reasons to get it. Click on this link. I'm like, okay, well, cool. I click on the link expecting to go to a sales page with a video or some bullet points. Nope, it's the order form, the checkout page. And I close the tab almost every single time for a number of reasons. First is I don't know exactly what I'm getting. There's no real kind of contract or anything. And then I think, man, if they couldn't even be bothered to set up a simple sales page, even just explaining what the email already said, I mean, how lazy and how slapped together is the paid product going to be? And finally, number 3 of the things angering me this week is when people try to piece together a solution for their business when they should have bought a course about it. Example, I look a few times a week on internet marketing message boards. The Warrior Forum is good for that, and Facebook groups. Internet Marketing Super Friends is a good Facebook group for that. And you'll see questions like, here's my sales letter, make it convert better, what's a good shopping cart, I need something coded. But then you'll see the questions that say things like, how do I do a podcast? Or they'll say, I recorded audio for my podcast, now what format should it be in? And then people will be helpful, because I mean, I'll be helpful every now and then too. Nothing wrong with asking an innocent question on a Facebook group. So what format? Here you go, there's the format. Okay, great. Now, where do I upload it to? Okay, we'll upload it here. Okay, great. Now, how do I get it on iTunes? And you see what happens? Someone is just asking one question, and there's like, if you give a mouse a cookie situation where they get this thing answered, but then that opens up the next question, and the next question, and the next question, and sooner or later you kind of realize that some of these people are trying to get some free training. So I'm all for free training. I give away a lot of free training. I'm all for helping people out in the wild on the internet. But the problem with solving a problem that requires 10 or 20 decisions, like making a podcast, is that you'll get all these different answers. You'll have one guy answer you how to make your format. Someone else will answer you where to host your podcast files. Someone else will answer you how often to podcast, and then you'll get 3 or 5 people responding for different things, and you'll just be pulled in all these different directions and you won't finish. So it's one thing to ask in public for some free advice, but it's not really worth too much. And many times, if I'm trying to figure out things like paid traffic, then I'll hire a coach for 1 hour and actually get someone who knows what they're talking about, as opposed to someone who has nothing better to do that day than to post on a forum. Sounds bad, but I don't know of an easier way to say that. So many times you should have just bought a dang course. So podcastcrusher.com is our podcasting course, and that will avoid the problems many people have when they make a podcast, but they don't do it right, and now they can't move it. They make a podcast, but they don't do it right, and then they're wondering why it won't play, or why the cover graphic shows a certain graphic on the podcast itself, but then the wrong graphic on a podcast episode, because they just didn't do it right. And many times, just buying a course on Udemy is a really good platform where I'm surprised at how detailed many of these courses end up being. Enough of that. So things angering me this week is the lack of mailing addresses on your website, like a physical snail mail address, linking directly to an order form, and trying to piece together a solution when you should have bought a course. And there's nothing wrong with saying you can't do both. Buy a course, go through all of it. If you're still stuck, then ask in public for ways to tweak what you already have set up. But it's so important to just have something, anything set up. Speaking of having things set up, software. Even if you're not in software putting out software, I find it really interesting to think and talk about software architecture and things like that, because it deals with the areas where computers and people really clash. There are really high paid people whose job is not to write any kind of code, whose job is not to be a marketer or an MBA person, but to design and architect how the programmer will create things. I didn't realize this until I was in college. So I think that if you've looked into software, and I mean you should, whatever niche you're in, if any of your competitors have anything to do with software, you should be looking at what they're doing and seeing if you can duplicate, if not make a better mousetrap of what they've created. But I think that the average internet marketer's perception of making software is that they'll have an idea, go to some Russian teenager living in his mom's basement and say, make a membership plugin for me, code me up an autoresponder script. And then they'll come back and this guy will pound a bunch of coffee and Diet Coke and come back in a month and it'll be perfect. And the problem with that is that, well, I mean, you'll have a great and cheap and fast piece of software made, but it won't be what you want. And it won't look the way that you imagined because you didn't actually architect it out right. You didn't spec it out right. And that just might be something as simple as drawing up a couple of pictures and explaining to someone, a programmer, I want you to make me an autoresponder plugin that looks like this, that runs the WordPress plugin. When someone installs it, they see a screen that looks like this. They can click on this tab and do this, and here's what this other screen looks like. So at least you can whip up the interface, and then they can at least make your software look the way you want it to. And then they can make a quick first version of that that's good but might not be perfect. You click around and see how it behaves, right? How it acts, how it responds to you clicking and changing things and typing things in. And then you can just cycle through that and iterate through that. So even though we're going to talk about a couple software things, don't tune out, don't let your eyes glaze over, because this still applies to you designing your membership sites, to figuring out your product funnel, to figuring out your sales letter. It all connects. So in software, one of the best the two best resources, I would say, that helped me so much with software, which funny thing, they didn't teach this in school. There's a really good book from the 1970s called The Mythical Man Month. And there's also a good book by a guy named Joel Spolsky that has all these essays on software. And it feels like the problem with things like software is it's either slapped together and has problems, or it's over-architected and then things just don't get done. You don't want to over-engineer software or over-engineer your business. There's a thing called scope creep, and I know it sounds like a creepy guy who's going to follow you down the street, but as it relates to your business, you want to make a book, you want to make a course, and you list all the things that you couldn't make in your course. I want to make 50 videos about list building. Well, how about you start with 10 of them, put it out there, see how it sells, and maybe you don't need the other 40. The same kind of thing applies to if you're creating software or getting a plugin made. There are lots of things your plugin could do, but if you have too many good ideas and try to pack in too many possibilities right out of the gate, then guess what's going to happen? You'll never get it done. It won't be something that people can use, and it'll be tough to sell because you won't have one single hook to focus on. So what do? Well, good question. You're going to be going through 8 steps, and once again, this applies to software or your products, your membership sites in general. It's an 8-step process, and I'm going to talk you through how you can use proof of concept and the minimum viable product to get something created quickly, software or not. Have fun doing it, and be glad you did it after you made it. Here are the 8 steps, and they're not 8 steps based on any one particular book or way of thinking or anything like that, but there are the 8 steps I noticed that I went through when we created our very most recent product named Website Remote. Number 1, pseudocode, ugly basic interface. Number 2, proof of concept. Number 3, mock-up interface. Number 4, test cases. 5, working interface. 6, connected all together. 7, debugging. 8, iterate again based on use cases. As we said, Website Remote was and still is a mass bulk WordPress management tool to handle all of your WordPress sites all at once. There are a lot of things I could have added in there right out of the gate that I decided to hold off on because I was consciously aware, and you should be too, that at any given time I could get distracted or even bored with the current project and switch to another project. So it's my complete 100% goal to get to a finishing point, to get to something that is sellable And usually what happens is I have about a 3-day window or maybe a 1-week window to get to the next logical stopping point. With Website Remote, I want to say I went through maybe 4 or so stopping points until we actually had something that was workable, sellable, had a sales letter, had a lot of things we could make some cool videos about. And then guess what? You put it out there, take a break for a few days, and when the thing that you've spent the last month on makes you a bunch of money, what do you want to do? You want to go and update it again to make even more money. Money is a very powerful motivator, and a lot of people miss out on that motivator because they don't actually get to something that is sellable. What we did was we wanted to make this WordPress management tool, and the very first thing before making it was I just drew out a couple screens to show what we were going to create. Because how am I going to code something up if I don't even know what it will look like or what things people can click on? So I created just the really ugly basic interface, and I didn't even care if the interface looked ugly or was a little bit awkward. I just wanted it to work. And I wanted, for the most part, to know where the text and buttons went to. Okay, so that was the first step, is just to have a sketch of how basically it will work. And it doesn't have to be the most beautiful, thought out interface at this point, just something that functions. Then number 2, the proof of concept. It's great to make all these menus and say, I'm going to make a screen that lists all my WordPress sites and lists the software version, the version of WordPress that it's running, that lists all the plugins. It has a button that says update just this one plugin, or update all plugins on this site, or update everything. It's one thing to make the buttons that say cool stuff like that, but the next step here is the proof of concept to prove that when I click those buttons, it actually works. At this stage, again, we aren't concerned with connecting the two. So we don't yet care about, okay, if I click the button, it does this. But I want to at least make a screen where if I load the screen, it updates a plugin on the site. If I go to a screen, it lists all the plugins on all sites. That way, I have these two separate things, right? I have the interface over in one section, and then I have the actual guts of it, the code, the logic, the horsepower over in the other section. So with me personally, what usually happens is when I make the interface, I dream too big. And I make that, on the first step, I make that sketch, I have the software do things that might not even be humanly possible. But that's okay, because if we second guess ourselves every step of the way, we'll never get anywhere. Haven't you ever been in a situation where you were writing a book, blog post, or even a report for school, and you just were in a bad mood, bad attitude, and you wrote half a sentence, deleted it? Wrote half a sentence, deleted it. We don't want to do that as it applies to you building your site or coding or whatever it is you're doing. So it's fine to dream big in that first basic interface, and then we use the proof of concept section to figure out what's possible. And now in step 3, we do the mock-up interface, and we pull ourselves back a little bit, and we might actually cross out and remove many of the things that were in that original interface. And we might actually care now about sizes of text, buttons, and colors and things like that. So first we made the dream interface, and we can always look back at that in future versions if we're adding new things, but we made the dream interface, then made the proof of concept to figure out what's possible. Now in step 3, we actually tone down the interface and make it something that's realistic. Then number 4, test cases. And this means that we go through as many of the possible scenarios as possible that someone is going to take using our software. So let me get a piece of paper out, and let me just write down, you've got our website remote plugin, and if you haven't used it yet, it's great. Go to websiteremote.com. And so if someone's going to remotely manage all their WordPress sites, well, one case is going to be, well, how do they add a site? And we say, well, what they do is they go to this one text box, type in the web address of their site, click a button to add it, then download our website remote plugin, and put it on their site, then refresh the page, and then it will go back and now their site will be on there. So that's one test case. That's one thing they could do. Another thing they could then do is then view all their sites and see all the software and all the plugins on those sites. So then we figure out what steps, what things people will click on to make that happen. Then we say maybe someone's going to update all sites. That could be a button to click on. Someone could update all the plugins on one site. Someone could update WordPress on all the sites. So we just run through the 5 or 10 different scenarios where someone could use our plugin, our product, and it might be 5 or 10 steps within that scenario, but we just figure out what are the 5 or 10 tasks or actions they will take, and within those tasks or actions are 5 to 10 steps. Great, that's the test case. Now number 5, we have the working interface. So we've drawn out just what it's going to look like on paper. We've coded the guts of it so that we know that things can actually work. We've then gone back to the interface and fixed that. Then we switched gears back again and wrote out the different tasks someone could take on our site. And this comes in handy later when we're testing it, because we can say, let me just go through each step, each task, and make sure everything functions without any errors. And now in step 5, we have a working interface. This is where we have already kind of gone through the interface a couple times. Now we get it to work. Now we say, when I click that one button, then it actually runs and does the thing that I said it does. Now when I click on the tabs, it actually loads the tabs instead of me having to run any kind of code separately. And then step 6, we connect it all together. And this is at the point where it's almost ready to ship out. Or like we kind of could maybe ship it out if we were desperate. There's still a lot of bugs, but now it all works together. So the interfaces on the separate screens now worked, and then now it all kind of runs together in one package. And we can test, how it functions with a brand new user, how it functions if we load up a bunch of stuff. Now it connects all together, which leads us to number 7, debugging. This is where we purposefully try to break it. We go in and we say, what happens if on this particular screen I click all the buttons, or I check all the boxes, or I check no boxes, or if there's a text box and they want me to type in a number, I'm going to type in a letter, I'm going to type in punctuation, I'm going to put in nothing. We do all these things to break it, and this is where 90% of our actual work happens. There's a thing called the Iceberg Principle in software, which means that when you see an iceberg, you just see a tiny piece of ice sticking up over the water, but 90% of it is down below the water. 90% of what you do in software is debugging, is just getting everything to function properly. It's easy to get it looking good, but actually to work in every possible scenario to idiot-proof it, now that's something totally different altogether. And in the case of your own business and internet marketing, I like to think of as creating a product, making your sales letter. That's just 10% of it. 90% of it is how are you going to debug your traffic problem? How are you going to debug your sales problem? And a lot of people, they have this switch. They have it crisscrossed. They think that 90% of the time it's making their product, because who wouldn't buy it? It's going to sell itself. And they only spend 10% of the time making their pitch, putting out blog posts, and then they wonder why they're not making any sales, because you had it flip-flopped. 10% making it and 90% debugging it, whatever debugging means to you. And then step number 8 is to iterate, or to go back and iterate through the interface again based on the use cases, based on people using it. I know I just used the term interface and iterate in the same sentence, 2 big words. The interface is how it looks, the structure of the design and all that. And then iterate means we go back over it again and again and again. What has been the most helpful for me is I will make the software and then I'll hand it off to my business partner, Mr. Lance Tomashiro, and he will record in a screen capture software called Camtasia, which has a 30-day trial. He will record him clicking around and trying stuff out. This is called hallway testing. It means that if you grab someone off the street or grab someone off the hallway, could they figure out how to use Microsoft Word? Could they figure out how to use WordPress? And you want to get as close as possible where someone can use your software without having to watch a video or read a manual. And if you're not selling software, then you want it to be where someone can click through upsells or buy from you. The buying process is easy, or once they buy, the membership process is easy. Or if there is a useful tool inside your membership site, then that is easy as well. And we wanted to make it where you don't depend on a bunch of videos or a bunch of written stuff. It should be as intuitive as possible to get the basic kind of stuff done. You can use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Outlook and Gmail and Google and all those things and Facebook without having to watch some videos. So your software hopefully shouldn't be any different, or at least should be where someone could figure out the basic stuff without a video, and then your video makes the advanced stuff easier. But they could a power user probably could figure out your advanced stuff even without a video. So with this process, especially since we're getting to the minimum viable product first and then looping back around and repeating, you might have to do 10 to 20% more so-called work in the long run, but you'll have a more stable product and you'll make the money faster because you'll have that version 1.0 out very soon. Then you can see how people use it and then only add the features in it that make sense. This thing about the Mythical Man Month is that there's a false belief that, once again, this applies to software, but it'll apply to anything else. In software, if a project is already late, adding more people in won't make it deliver sooner. It'll just make it later. It'll just stall things out. And the biggest reason for that is because if you have 50 people working on a team, everyone has to communicate with each of the 50 people. So there's something to be said about a programming team of just 1 or 2 or 3 people, because they could even be faster than the big, huge team of 50 people. Once again, if it's in software, or even if you're making a course inside of a membership site, or making your funnel, or things like that. So sometimes you also have to see a design or an interface in action in order to figure out what you do next. And that is why I like to make the design first, sketch out something simple, and then go back to the code, back to the design, back to the code. And then when it's almost ready to ship out, then I will give it to someone to try it out for me, a crash test dummy, someone who hasn't seen me code it up, someone who hasn't seen the interface at all, trying it sight unseen. And I'm telling you, just having someone record a video of them clicking around, I'll see where things get awkward, I'll see where they get hung up, and I've used this to improve the design of our membership sites because, for example, Membership Cube has areas where you get a free copy of Wishlist Member, you get a free membership site theme, you get all these free plugins and stuff like that. And I've seen how people click around awkwardly and get lost, and they say, aha, I need to add some links on the sidebar. Aha, I need to add some links on top. And I have to add a table, I have to add icons. And so just seeing how someone uses your sites, if it's a membership site, if it's a sales letter, you see where the bottlenecks are, where people get stuck, and then I'll show you what to change. In a non-software example, where proof of concept is helpful, is where you first get the results. This means that if you're figuring out paid traffic, figuring out AdWords traffic, don't fall into the trap of learning something with the intention of teaching it right away. Because the problem is that you're going to be taking the wrong kinds of notes and you're not going to be implementing. You're just going to be repeating what you've heard second hand, third hand, fourth hand. You don't want that. Show, or at least get consistent AdWords traffic for your own sites. Great. Then show how you did it. Show screenshots, figure out what you did correctly. In copywriting, don't learn some copywriting principles and then regurgitate it out. Keep a swipe file or develop a checklist and make everything you're doing in your business easily doable and easily repeatable. And then once you have it mastered and down pat, then once again, just like Mr. Marlon Sanders, the process is so simple and easy that it almost sells itself. That when it comes time to make the sales letter and have a convincing sales argument, you show some screenshots. You show the speed at which you got to an impressive result. You don't have to pile on all these weird facts and things like that. And just in general, in your own business, you shouldn't be waiting for someone else to hold you up. This whole episode we talked about you want to avoid having 5 or 10 projects 10% of the way done, or having everything taken apart or in pieces. I mean, let's say that in your own business, whether you have like a partnership or a team or you hire outsourcers, let's figure that there are things you need to make, like you need to make a product, you need to have a sales letter, you need to have an affiliate program, you need to have maybe like a swipe file and ads for the affiliates, you need to have some email swipe copy, and maybe some paid traffic, and maybe some joint ventures. But even if you don't know how to make a sales letter, but you have made the product, well then great, make the product and make a crappy bare bones sales letter. And then once the copy's done, then you can apply it to what's already there because you've iterated again in this process. If it's the opposite way, where if you know how to make a sales letter, but you're outsourcing the product, then make the sales letter the dream sales letter for the whole product and make it exactly as if it was ready to sell and make the payment button. And then if it turns out that in your process that the product has to have things taken out or some things aren't possible, then just delete or rework those parts of the sales letter. That way you still have the minimum viable product, and that way you're not waiting on anyone. I mean, if you think you're waiting on someone to craft the emails for when it comes time to pitch your product, write some really just bare basic emails yourself, and then when the better emails come in, you can add in or replace what you already have. But I can't stress this enough. This is such a huge problem that people come across where they are waiting. They have things laying around in pieces and they're not iterating in their business. They're not getting to version 1.0, getting the bugs out, getting to version 1.1, 1.2, and just getting to the point where they're making money every step along the way, or they at least could make that money if they had the traffic coming in. I'm Robert Plank. That was Proof of Concept. Use the minimum viable product prototyping and version 1.0 to leapfrog your competitors and get everything done. If you're interested in software design in general, grab our course at softwaresecretsexplained.com. And if you want to have your own membership site, if you're not quite at the software stage, the place to go is membershipcube.com. The best thing I think recently about Membership Cube is that if you want to have a checklist built into your membership site, some kind of a software tool or pane of disconnect, you can use our WP Notepad plugin, which is included in Membership Cube, to create fill-in-the-blank forms, to create beautiful-looking checklists, to create templates built into your site, to make it more than just some written materials and make it more than just a collection of videos. So go there now and be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe us at robertplankshow.com/iTunes. Or Robert Plank, go out there, make some money, and thank you.